Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to the Woke Blokes podcast. Ryan Hassan from the Centre for Healing here, joined as always by Nico, Sultan of Still, the mythical man of McRae, Sutherland. Nico, how are you, my friend? The Cape Crusader of mindfulness.
After that introduction, I'm just in a battle with my ego now, not to let my ego take over.
Let it roam free.
No, I'm not
No,
into
keep
it.
it tamed.
Yeah. What are you saying there? It's something that piqued my interest. No, but it's gone. See, so I was in a battle with my ego, and I couldn't retain the thought that passed through.
The ego
So
was too distracted with all the compliments coming your way.
it was. Oh, that's what it was. It was welcome back to the Woke Blokes podcast. Hopefully, all our listeners are returning listeners. But if you're not a returning listener, welcome to the Woke Blokes podcast.
Yeah, welcome for the first time if you're here. We're glad to have you. We've got a whole catalogue of over 70 episodes if you want to pick and choose ones that might be relevant to you. And yeah, I'm excited for today, mate.
I recommend just going back and starting from the start. Go back to the metanoia and rip through from the start.
I was going to actually speak to you about something before we recorded, but we might as well talk about it while we're on air. Our podcast is called Woke Blokes, right?
Correct.
That's all. No. I just wanted to confirm that's what it was called. No.
Yep. All right. Good chat.
It's interesting because it's like we started it. We're like we were going to call it. What was it meant to be called first? The Men of Metanoia.
Men of Metanoia.
And then I couldn't get the word out properly, so we're like, let's change the name and Woke Blokes. And we thought that was funny. We're like, that's a bit of a piss take, and it's a bit funny. Since we started though, the last couple of years, that term woke has really. It's taken on a whole new meaning, hasn't it? Like there's this whole woke culture now, and the woke movement, which I actually don't really like at all, to be honest.
I don't. Well, I like how people are coming into an awareness that the old adage that we have two lives and the second one begins when we realise we only have one. So that's what it's coming into, an awakening and awareness that there is a different way of living outside the typical standard norm, and so that's a beautiful thing. But I don't like that people's egos have gotten involved and they're creating this faux wokeness. It's this, I think there's a difference between coming into a deeper understanding of how we can live a more healthy, mindful, present, conscious, constructive life. That's a beautiful thing. I think the faux wokeness is for douchebags and people that are just wanting to try to be cool.
Yeah, but it's kind of has taken on this new meaning now, and like the woke culture is like cancel culture, and you can't speak about certain topics or we'll ever get gang up on people online and make sure they get their freedom of speech taken away, and which is starting in a lot of universities in the States. Yeah. So what do you reckon? Should we change our name?
No, we're gonna hold fast because all that'll fade away, all that'll drop off, and everything comes and goes. It'll be trendy for a while, and
Well, if they listen to us, they'll know. Like, because I'm just imagining someone now scrolling and like, oh, well, I've heard, what's this podcast? What? Oh, Woke Blokes. Oh, yeah, that'll be this, bull crap. And they mightn't give us a listen. Or you reckon the right people will find us and it'll be okay?
Yep.
All right, good.
Well, we don't advertise, we don't promote, we don't do anything. So I think we have a very organic listenership, and
It's one of your favorite words, isn't it?
What?
Organic. It happened very organically. It's come together quite organically. The friendship just blossomed organically.
I wouldn't say it's a favourite word, but I think it's on high rotation in the vocabulary.
It is. It's a good one, though.
Well, it is. I guess it's another way of expressing authentic. There's an authenticity about it. It's not manufactured. It's not forced. It's not in being pushed. It just is, and it's just happening.
Spontaneously arising.
Like a 13-year-old boy getting an erection on the school bus.
Yes.
Just that.
Tucking it under the belt.
and putting a school bag on top of it.
Just say, by the time we get to school, please be gone. Please be gone. Like you got that attractive girl sitting in the seat in front, who you've had a crush on all year. She's in her short school dress, and you're like,
Yeah.
come on, body,
And
work
she
with
said
me here.
hi to you. She's actually noticed you and said hi to
Batted
you.
the eyelids a little bit.
Yeah. Testosterone is just going, right, I'm here, I'm present.
Wasn't it such a funny time being a teenager?
Oh, it
I
was
look
indeed.
back now and I'm like, it was so laugh, but it was so serious at the time. You know, all these hormones just raging inside you, and you're trying to fit in at school. You don't want to be an outcast because in that period of life, you're in your socialization phase. You're like, where do I fit in here? What group can I align myself to? At the same time, you've got all the stuff with girls going on. All of a sudden, girls are starting to, mature, and you're like freaking out. Did you remember like the first time in probably early high school, that first girl started to get, grow some boobies? Yeah, me too.
Oh, there
It
was
was a wild time.
the early developers, and you know, just I not poor them, but geez, they had it hard because through no choice of their own were they suddenly
The center of
sprouting.
attention.
Yeah, and then they're in the spotlight, and all the boys are just like,
There's a great
and
episode of South Park. Have you seen it? It's this exact thing actually. I can't remember the character's name, but she, yeah, starts developing, and all the guys that they revert to like some sort of Neanderthal state and start like just grunting and pushing each other and vying for attention. It's quite funny.
we stood no chance. The chemical shitstorm going on, there was no chance for self control, self regulation. It was just yeah, it was a weird time, but
And you don't get it unless you have, I think, parents that are really switched on to this kind of stuff and everything. You don't kind of get a handbook of how to handle that period. Plus, you don't really want to listen at that point. You feel like you know a lot more than what you do, which most of us do at most points in our life. But it's we haven't got like a handbook of like, hey, here's an instruction manual of how to manage this period of your life. And so but we like now, I think teenagers, they're learning just being on TikTok and shit like that and trying to work out what's going on. For us, it was, TV shows and just hearing stuff from other friends, which is a terrible source of information because they got the same shit going on.
yeah, it's when you're back in that space, you're really operating from those three amigos, the three beliefs. I must be loved and liked. Well, how do I fit in? Where are my mates? How do I look cool? My life must be perfect, and I must look perfect, and my friendship must be perfect, and I must be seen to be cool, and I must get what I want, which is everything, which is completely irrational. So we've got those. We're operating off those beliefs. So the ego is just like basically constantly craving, and then being so irrational, and then we've got these new chemicals introducing themselves into our system, and yeah, it's amazing any of us get through it alive.
Barely. We kind of barely make it, don't we? There's a few
Yeah,
times I'm like, I don't know how I got through that, but we do.
yeah, we do. I suppose it leads into a bit about what I wanted to touch on today.
I don't even
Was
know, Nick. Tell me. I'm excited. I'll talk about
well,
anything today.
it's a very organic transition, right? It's just it's happened.
Organic and orgasmic.
All right. Introduce someone. So I just dropped Em off at work, and she on the way there we were just having a chat. She was telling me about this lady who came into her work yesterday, and they were talking about masks and face rashes and everything that they have to wear because of corona, and then was saying, I take it off when there's no customers in store, and the woman's like, I just take it off anyway. You realise you don't actually have to wear it. And Em's like, oh yeah, but it's consideration. She said, oh, and why are you wearing a mask then, if you don't have to wear it, to this lady? And she said, oh well, I just had a nervous breakdown and I just came out of hospital yesterday. And I was like, okay, sorry to hear. And so why are you wearing a mask? She goes, well, the reason I went in there was because I didn't wear a mask into a supermarket, and a man really had a crack at me, and I just lost it and broke down. And so I'm afraid not to wear a mask in case I get attacked again. And it got me thinking. And
What did it get you thinking about?
well, resiliency and and ownership, accountability, responsibility. Where's that line between we're responsible for how we feel and you know basically how do we exist in an imperfect world with imperfect people? I think so. We're talking about being woke earlier, and I don't know about you, but I'm booked up till mid-April. It's just so interesting to see how many people are wanting to come and do the work and to learn how to operate, to manage themselves differently, and to not be so reactive to everything out there. And I just think it's so important for ladies or people like that woman yesterday to learn that they're allowed to stand there and to have someone yelling and screaming and to let that all pass them by. To get into the four agreements and don't to not take it personally. This says more about you than it says about me. And obviously, we don't want men or women or kids or teenagers or whatever going and yelling and putting other people down. Obviously, that's not ideal, but we don't live in utopia. So while there are people out there that are hurt and they're hurting other people through physical or verbal interactions, there's so much that we can do to look after ourselves and to protect ourselves. And it's all learning. It's just things that we can learn to not be so deeply affected by what goes on out there.
Yeah, I think maybe instances like that are an indication that someone can start to, become more resilient and unpack what they need to unpack. Like we're living in a time at the minute where when there's a lot of fear present in society and that creates some sort of division, that creates the division of, well, I'm over here with what I believe and this person's exhibiting something different. And so I'm going to lose my compassion and empathy for that person and feel like it's my right to be able to tell them off or attack them. So there's two sides to it here. I'm like, so I'm thinking more about the I suppose what you would call the perpetrator. It's not a great term, but it's like the person on the other side. Just
Well,
to give you,
just call them the stimulus. They're just a source of stimulus. Yeah, and everything's neutral until we interpret it through our filters. So this lady interpreted that stimulus through certain filters, and one of those filters was taking it personally and jumping to conclusions and going to the worst case scenario, and that made her systems, her sympathetic nervous system operate, her vagal nerve operate and tighten up and constrict, and adrenaline, cortisol to be released, and she had a very physiological experience due to that. So
yeah,
she was in fear.
yeah, true. So that it's like at what state? So for me, I'm like that's someone who's probably having some sort of trauma response. So there's no opportunity for someone in that moment to go, okay, let me work out that this isn't about me and let me kind of filter this maybe in a different way and then have my nervous system react in a different way. Somebody who's done months or even years of work might be in a position and have the tools to be able to do that. But for most folk out there, and I agree, more people are up for doing the work at the minute, but most people out there who aren't at that stage will go into this trauma response where the nervous system just goes into complete activation or complete shutdown, and without the work behind them and the tools, there's really no way of getting around that. Now that can then be a situation where it's like, okay, I need to start to unpack that. I need to start to learn the tools and do the healing that I need to do so that next time that happens, I can let it move through, and it may cause a slight activation or a slight shutdown, but I can get on with my life and realize that person's coming from their own sense of deficiency or their own anger or that kind of thing. To give you an example, so I had a story a few months ago. A friend of mine, and her daughter was walking in the supermarket, and her daughter, early 20s, I think, pregnant. So, I think 6 or 7 months pregnant. So clearly showing. And she was out with a friend of hers who had a little baby. And so the pregnant woman was holding her friend's baby and walking in the shops and wasn't wearing a mask. And a guy literally like hip and shock bumped into her intentionally and said, you should be wearing a fucking mask. And she said, well, it's because of guys like you is why I don't. See, she was held down and raped and had a hand put over her mouth while that happened. So putting anything over her mouth or face caused a massive trauma response. Okay, so it's just this complete lack of empathy and compassion and understanding from people, which can cause a lot of this stuff. Now, if she then, in 5 years, 10 years time, who knows, maybe she does a bit of work and does healing and that kind of thing. And maybe number one, she can wear a mask or something if she wants to, right? But then also, she can help herself see that when someone projects like that, it is more, about them trying to get their anger and their issues out than it is about the person. But I think that the nervous system kind of trauma response is very, very real if someone hasn't dived quite deeply into that, which most people haven't.
Well, they're going to be highly sensitive
Yeah.
and on the lookout for it. It's interesting listening to that story. If she can't wear a mask, but she's pregnant, if it's the difference between being able to have sex and fall pregnant again after a terrible experience that she had, but she can't put a mask on. So it's on a couple of different levels there. There's some interesting.
Yeah, and I don't know her well enough to be able to kind of understand because I don't know the answer to that.
No, well, there isn't one. It's just an interesting observation, and I hope that she's okay. So whether it be that bloke who hip and shoulder or the bloke that yelled at this lady and so he was the catalyst for her to have a breakdown. He didn't make her do that. He was just a source of stimulus. He was the catalyst that then she had such a reaction to that she then. And it was the same with my experience, I suppose. Not having the tools and resources, not having the awareness and the education and so on and so forth, moving through my life experiences and the traumatic ones. When I did my knee, all of a sudden I couldn't work anymore and I couldn't run, and all my friends got deployed and my family were over the other side of the country. There was a trauma there. It was different to someone yelling at you, but it was still a trauma on some level. And what was revealed is that I didn't have the internal structure in my foundation to emotionally support myself and to keep moving through those experiences. I got stuck. So I got stuck and I spiraled and I spiraled and I spiraled down. Finally, I reached rock bottom and went, oh shit, this isn't working for me. And thankfully I went and did the work and got that foundation really strong and healthy. So then the external scaffolding could come and go, and now there's a version of me that exists that if someone stands there and yells at me, I just sit there and I'm like, wow, what a wonderful display of suffering. And because the ego's not getting triggered, because the system's not getting activated, it's EQ, it's emotional intelligence. I'm self-aware, self-managing, I'm then socially aware, and because I'm okay, I'm in a position to give that relationship what's required. And what's required in that moment is just to go, wow, this isn't about me, this is about you. And I'm in that compassion, I'm in that empathy for this person. I'm like, are you okay? Is there anything you want to chat about? Or I can set a compassionate boundary. I can say, hey, I understand you're upset and you're taking it out on me, but I'm not going to continue to allow that. All of a sudden I have options at my disposal.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's like
DVA. Sorry, just quickly add to that. So, what was my catalyst for breaking down was linking with the Department of Veterans Affairs. At that time, I was heavily invested in this narrative of they made me feel this way. They did this to me. You can hear the deep attachment in there, the deep distortion of taking it personally and blaming and labeling and worst case scenario, like you can just massive deep distortions. And coming through it and out of it, and looking back at it, you go, they didn't. No one did that to me. It was just life happening. It was just. It was neither good nor bad. It's so interesting. If you line 100 people up and a man walks down that line and yells at every single one of them, some people will end up in breakdown and need to go to hospital. Some people will punch that man. Some people will just sit there and smile and go, "Wow, all right, buddy, whatever." Everyone's going to have such a different reaction, and so it's not the stimulus. The stimulus is always the same. It's your relationship with that stimulus.
Yeah, we're often looking at we're just projecting parts of ourselves. I do that when I do talks a bit, and I say like, you're all seeing a different version. You've all got a different opinion of me and different opinion of what I'm saying. And someone might be sitting there going, "Oh, wow, that's amazing. This guy's great. This is what he's talking about." And then someone else will go, "This guy's full of shit. I can't stand him." And it's like, who's right
That's
there?
me. That's me. That's me. I'm
Yeah.
right.
And it's like, and who's right there? It's like neither of them are right. Right? There's there's a saying as well, you're never as good as people say you are, and you're never as bad as people say you are. We can't base our self-worth and our self-esteem on the opinions of others, because they're just looking at parts of themselves projected outside of themselves onto another human being.
It's all about interpretation.
Yeah.
It's all down to when I was dropping Em off, the rear sensors were going off, and she hadn't put her seatbelt on, so that was going off, and that alarm, and she's like, "Oh, just all these bells and whistles in this car, isn't there?" You know, just and she said something not negative, but she was like, "Oh, there's just so many noises," and then I said, "Yeah." Alarm! Be careful of your car. It might hit something. Put your seatbelt on. We want you to get home safely. And she goes, "Oh, you're such a glass half full kind of person, aren't you?"
But isn't that like a nervous system? It's these different alarms going off saying not safe, not safe, not safe. That's what our nervous system's doing in those moments of stress. It's just like
Totally.
the sensing beepers or the put your seatbelt on. It's like take some sort of action to avoid this threat.
Yeah, that were.
And so
A lot of the time, we're not actually under threat.
That's right. Yeah, well, we're under
perceived
we're under perceived threat, and it's also not even that. It's not even perceived threat, because thousands of years ago there was threat to our physical survival, and now there's not. So it's like threat to our psychological self or our ego structure, and even then it's perceived threat. So it's like, we find out that a couple of people at work are in a WhatsApp group without me, and all of a sudden my whole nervous system starts to go like this.
I'm not being loved and liked.
I'm not being loved and liked. What are they saying about me? But it's the exact same response as if we're in a bloody war with a rival tribe 20,000 years ago.
And so you look at mental health and physical health. If you have a body, you have physical health. If you have a mind, you have mental health, is the way that we sort of explain it as best we can easily. And if when you're young, if you burn your hand on the stove, ouch, you're going to learn not to do that, and that's to keep you safe. That's sharp, that's hot, that's dangerous, that's a threat. Okay, I'm not going to go there. But you don't then go, "I'm never going to go near the stove again." You don't become dysfunctional to a degree.
Yeah. I heard that. You go.
The same's happening then psychologically. We bump up against something sharp, or the burns, or that doesn't feel very nice, and it's exactly the same reaction. It's that I need to feel safe. I'm not going to go near that person again because this is going to hurt. But there's it's a different pain. It's a different. The body is very soft and sensitive and vulnerable, so it needs to stay away from sharp, burny, hurty things. Where the mind
sounds like an STD, a burny, hurty thing.
But the mind, this is where we can get it more resilient. We can't toughen our skin up, and we don't want to toughen up in that old sort of toxic masculine way. But we can learn that resiliency in that creating some space between that stimulus and response, and just to learn to observe it more without that mindless reaction involved.
Yeah, and there's a real distinction between knowing that a stove will burn you and fearing fire. And that's what a lot of people do. It's like the same with,
I'm never cooking again.
yeah, it's like the Buddhists use the snake analogy. It's like there's a difference between knowing, hey, if I see a snake and I go and start patting it and cuddling it, it's going to bite me, right? There's then a difference between developing a fear of snakes, and then I see the rope or the stick, and that's a snake, and I avoid that certain park because there might be a snake there. All of a sudden, the fear is actually making decisions for me in my life when it's such a tiny portion of it. So it's really interesting. It's just something you're saying.
We can't have peace on earth until we have peace within ourselves, because we're all co-creating this society. So what I really was interested in talking about today is that responsibility about that lady that ended up in the psych ward, or the hospital, or wherever she was. Where's her responsibility to herself? Where's her responsibility to learn that resiliency, to learn how to come out of that hypersensitive, reactive nervous system, and into a position where she can just, okay, buddy, it doesn't affect her so deeply. Where, he obviously has a responsibility and work to do. Whether he does or doesn't is out of our control. But this is what it comes down to. We can only control how we feel about things. We can't control what other people say or do. So if we continue to outsource our happiness, if we continue to need the world and the people within it to be a certain way and to say certain things, we're going to keep falling over. We're going to keep getting hurty-burnied. So
yes. Weekend at Hurdy Bernie's. Well, don't pray for an easy life, pray for the strength to endure a hard one. As you were talking earlier, it got me thinking. You were talking about your experience, I can relate it to mine as well. I had a divorce, which was kind of a catalyst to me go off. So the divorce or the ending of that relationship was the stimulus. And then my response was to not properly deal with it and start using drugs in ridiculous amounts. So it's like, so it's the divorce's fault, or like this has happened to me, which is so silly because it's like I played at least half a role in that ending of the relationship anyway. Plus someone else,
you co-create relationships,
and someone else. I know people who've had a divorce and it's been great for them. They felt fantastic, So it's not the thing, a divorce, that's the problem here. And so for me, it's like we have the stimulus, as you're calling it, and it causes this reaction. Now we want to obviously.
It causes a reaction if you don't have the skill set to observe.
Yeah, but I'm saying let's just say anything's a react. You can call it a response if you want, but
they're very different things.
I know what you're saying, but let's just say every cause has an effect. And so maybe someone yelling at someone, one of the effects can be having a nervous breakdown and going into hospital. Another one can be like, and kind of brushing it off and feeling a bit sorry for that person, or setting a compassionate boundary and getting on with your day. So it's like there's some internal, and it's normally unconscious at first until we start to do a lot of the work, this unconscious reaction kind of happens. Then what I'm thinking is that then there's a reaction or a response to that reaction that happened inside of us, right? So let's say now that I get taken to hospital because I've had a nervous breakdown. Then it's kind of, I feel like it's a responsibility to go, okay, wow, that, person yelling at me caused this complete breakdown of my nervous system and I have struggled so much. What do I do with this? And now I have some sort of response that I would ideally like to take based on that. And we want to do that from a place of non-judgment as well, because a lot of people will really dig themselves into a deeper hole because they'll be like ashamed of the way that they reacted. They're like,
well, it's the hurt people thing. So someone yells at someone's hurting, I yell at you, you have a nervous breakdown, and then because you're not perfect and because you're in this state that you don't want to be in, then you're hurting, so then you beat yourself up. So it's just compounding and compounding.
That's right.
And compounding.
Instead of just saying, hey, look at this information that I have in front of me, this stimulus.
You could have done that the first time as well. So it's
what if I didn't know how to do that?
No, but
I don't know what I don't know.
But you can't then expect to do it when you become the source of stimulus. And this is where it gets awesome, is that you are the biggest source of stimulus. What you say, think, do, feel, that's all stimulus. And a lot of people don't like feeling unpleasant things, sharpy burny things. Yeah. So
Emotionally sharpy, burny things.
yeah. So therefore, then that I'm feeling sad or I'm feeling really hurt or whatever. That may be an appropriate response to have, but because they have such an aversion to feeling that, then they're gonna go into this. Well, I shouldn't be feeling this. I don't want to be feeling this. This is fucked that I'm feeling this. I'm such a loser for feeling this. And then all of a sudden, the initial stimulus that could have been, let's call it option A, would be to observe it if we've got the skill set to do it. Option B is then, all right, we're being affected by the stimulus, but now we catch ourselves and then we take care of ourselves and look after ourselves and learn from that experience. But most people do option C, which is be affected by the initial stimulus. Then they beat themselves up when they realise that they haven't done the right thing, and then they just off they go.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. That's one of the first things we do is try and teach people why their nervous system reacted that way in the moment. Okay, so because once they understand, they can stop beating themselves up, and then we can go, okay, now there's things that you can learn and tools that we can teach you, where you can start to, not have those reactions and better be able to regulate your nervous system. But we're one of those, because I see it a lot with, I'm talking about the extremes today, but a lot of sexual abuse, and a lot of women don't understand why I didn't fight back. It's like, why didn't I fucking fight? And they really beat themselves up for it. And once you can,
the capacity to.
they didn't have the capacity. Your nervous system went literally into a shutdown state to survive the incident. It has to dissociate. And so you can see a lot of people, when you explain that, they can kind of go, okay, that's why.
But why didn't I stand up for myself? Why didn't I punch him back? Why didn't I? Yeah.
But then what happens then? It can be an issue then, because then if I don't, it's like this moment where it's like the person has to go, all right, I kind of understand it now. What do I do? What tools do I have to learn? What do I have to unpack? And that's ideally where we want them to be, because now they're a willing participant in their own life's journey of getting better at handling certain situations. But then a lot of people, unfortunately, go and get diagnosed, and then their whole life becomes around trying to avoid situations that cause the breakdown, and also identifying with the fact that that just happens to me because I've got A, B, C, or D condition that I'm going to have for the rest of my life.
Oh, yeah, they'll stick someone will stick a "you are a victim" or a "you are a survivor" label on them, and then that's how they'll start identifying for the rest of their life. So they're not in a position where they can thrive and grow and become a better person for having been through the experience. They get stuck and trapped in that thing, and so all these limiting beliefs / glass ceilings are put in place, so they stop growing from the moment of that trauma. Those really important emotional self parts stop developing, stop growing, and so all of a sudden 20 years later they're 62, they're still acting like a 40-year-old, and you're like, you've got a bit of work to do.
Yeah, and it's not to say that this shit's like it hurts and it's hard, and that's part of it, but like post-traumatic stress can become post-traumatic growth. Okay, but most people just stay in the stress part, and because they've got a label and a diagnosis and been told, this is your condition and your biochemistry, and that's how you're going to react in these situations all the time, then they just stay in post-traumatic stress without any even light at the end of the tunnel of being able to get out, let alone turn it into growth.
And then we'll just keep medicating the symptom, medicate the symptom, medicate the symptom. I got discharged from the army, severe anxiety, severe depression, PTSD, alcohol dependency disorder, sexualized violence was the attributor to most of that, but so was a knee injury and blah, blah. And I carried those labels for ages and wore those labels and identified as those labels. I didn't want to go down the prescribed medication path, so I prescribed myself some Jack Daniels, and I had a good old time doing that for a while. And but you're not trending. I did this thing with a client the other day, did graph, and the X and the Y. Is the X the one that goes up?
We get the idea.
Well, yeah, okay.
There's a vertical and a horizontal axis.
Yeah. So The X one pointing upwards is health on a scale of 0 to 10, and the one running across goes is health. No, is age, and that goes from 0 to 100, let's say. And so I was sort of cruising along, and you look at the worm, and then all of a sudden, life experience happened, and then I started declining, and so my health was declining, and because of the way I was treating myself, um, my timeline would have started shrinking as well because of the amount of alcohol I was putting into my system. And so I showed this client the other day. I said, you're at a crossroads. You've got three options. You can either keep doing what you're doing, and the health will keep going down and the age will keep shrinking, or you can start drinking a bit more responsibly and having some alcohol-free days, and your health might start increasing a little. There's a party going past. Or if you stop drinking completely, your health will really grow and your age growth will keep going a lot longer. And he actually never stopped and looked at it like that. He didn't know he had options. B, he hadn't looked at the ripple effect of his actions and where he was trending. So it was really interesting to watch him, and he's sitting there, he's like, you've given me a lot to think about.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, great. Okay, awesome.
We seem to be, especially in our culture today, very short-term thinkers. It's like, how am I going to get through the day? How am I going to get through the week? Most people are living paycheck to paycheck. It's all really, what am I doing this weekend? It's very short-term thinking. So to see the impacts that our decisions are having on our life, especially when you bring that age factor into it and see that shortening, it's like, how do I want to be in a year, 5 years? And the decisions that we make today, the decisions that we make on a daily basis are going to contribute to that. And it's like, then it gets hard though, because you got to be aware and conscious and be grateful for you doing it, because that's what I have to do sometimes. Like, I've made so many decisions that have been better for my life now, and I have a great life, but I have to catch myself and go, all right, we've got to be grateful for old Ryan and all the decisions he's made the past however many years, because the trap is then, wow, what am I going to do now? Am I going to do this and that? So it's like, it's not the payoff that immediate gratification is, I guess, is what I'm saying.
Well, it's that long term. It's not that quick fix, magic wand, instant gratification. We're not chasing the dopamine. It's the serotonin, as we spoke about last episode. But on that graph, you start adding layers and introducing other characters to that story and to that timeline, and say, all right, your grandkids. You've got grandkids. You can have this much time with them or that much time with them. And I'm saying, take it with a grain of salt. We obviously, Keith Richards, how long would he have not lived? He might have been dead without all that alcohol in his system. He could have pickled himself.
There's always outliers.
but let's just speak in general terms. You start introducing things that are important to him, and he starts seeing different options, and it creates a shift internally, and all of a sudden he's like, oh well, it's reprioritizing. Really, it's just like, I don't want to just unwind at the end of the day with a couple of scotches and a couple of wines, and have that little feel good, or do I want to really get to spend a lot more days hanging out with my grandkids and playing with them?
Yeah, it's like there's this called the Dickens process. I used to do it with clients a bit. I think I stole it from Tony Robbins, but it's like called the Dickens process, based on Charles Dickens' novel, the Christmas one, right? Where he gets, what's the bloody guy's name?
Did he create Dickens cider?
I don't know. I don't think so. The story was, the Grinch, of Christmas, and no one liked him, and he was greedy, and then he got visited by 3 ghosts to try and wake him up, so to speak. So what you can do, you can start to use some visualization and play out these things into the future. It's like, these beliefs that I have, these behaviors that I'm doing, how have they affected my life up to this point? How are they affecting me now? And what's that going to look like in the future? And you get them to visualize looking at himself in the mirror. And I've had so many clients who are like, in 5 years or 10 years, they're like, I'm alone. No one else is around me. My health is fucked. I'm so sad. I'm more lonely than what I am. And then you ask them to go 20 years in the future and they're like, I can't see it. I don't even think I'm here.
And we do that because change only occurs when the discomfort of where we are becomes greater than the discomfort involved in moving.
Mm.
So most people need to be, you know, fire set up under their ass before they'll shift out. A lot of people, I'd say probably 80% of people need a catalyst for change. They need a near-death experience, a heart attack, they need diabetes, they need divorce or a breakdown or bankruptcy or whatever to then go, fuck, I'm not doing it properly. But what we're doing is we're trying to help them to change without that catalyst, and you know it's helping them to become woke to a degree. It's helping them into awareness, helping them into understanding, and then whatever decisions and choices they make from there. And I said to this bloke, you don't have to do anything. This isn't Nick telling you how to live your life or what to do. This is going to come from within you, and whatever decision you make, you have to be at peace with. So if you choose to continue on the path that you're on and you don't get 5, 10 more years with your grandkids, that's cool, but as long as you're at peace with that.
Yeah. Yeah. That's, yeah, I couldn't agree more. It's like, there's no real right or wrong with anything. Anyone can live any way they want. You know, that's how, there's nothing wrong. I obviously deal with a lot of addicts. I'm like, it's nothing wrong with being a drug addict. But don't fucking complain. That's where it gets wrong. Where it's like in 5 years, it's like, how did I end up here? Oh, life's so fucked. It's like, come on, wake up. You know, that's why the person is drinking.
Why have I got early dementia? It's not
why have I got early dementia? Why have I got liver disease? All this kind of stuff. And it's like, no, you can live any way you want. Just don't complain when you get the results of that life later on that you really knew were coming. That's where it gets a little bit.
Everything we do is going to bear fruit, and if you don't like the taste of that fruit, then you can't blame the chef.
Exactly.
It's not God or Buddha or the universe's fault. There's no outsourcing of blame. It's taking a responsibility and it's so weird. Like it's so. I was thinking about the other day. I've got these rentals. This flesh covered
the meat suit.
Yeah, the meat suit, and we've got that, and it's just a matter of like we treat it so poorly and so do it such a disservice, but then have this expectation that we've got to really, expect it to live for 100 years and to function optimally and to perform at a really high degree, and it's just so unrealistic.
Yeah, and then we go out and spend thousands of dollars on our car. We bloody wax it and buff it on the weekend and shine it so it looks shiny and perfect, and then we go and just start smashing beers and doing coke that night with our body.
Or we'll spend hours in the gym every week, but then we'll just operate in a way that produces dopamine and cortisol and adrenaline and all these things that harm us on that internal level. So we are truly strange creatures.
We are strange creatures, but I think where we started this conversation is like, if we have those instances in our life where something has caused a massive reaction in us, could be a breakdown, could be even something less than that, could be something our spouse said that just got us just really angry, and then it's like being able to honestly look at ourselves and go, okay, that's my anger, that was my reaction, why would that be? How can I? They didn't make me angry. How do I better understand that, and then how do I better myself so I can react better in the future?
Yeah, so it's semantics again, and I know you'll, but it's respond better in the future, not react better, because we can. So much of what we do happens unconsciously, and we're not conscious of. But this is all I'm trying to do. Viktor Frankl, in between that stimulus and a space, is a response. Is a space, and in that space lies our power to choose, and that choice lies our freedom. So stimulus can occur, and we can sit for a minute and take a breath and think our way through it and go, right, where's this coming from? Who's this really about? Oh, this is about them. And we can mindfully, deliberately, consciously choose how we respond to that situation. Most people, however, are reacting mindlessly to that stimulus and just getting triggered, and then all of a sudden off they go, and then they're in their suffering in some degree. So it is semantics, but there is a massive difference between responding and reacting, and there is a way in which we can learn to respond mindfully, which then leaves us feeling so much better.
And it's like any training, you love the mental reps, Nico, but it's like we can make this an automatic behavior. Right now, for most people, it's automatic to react, but then we can also make it automatic to respond by having to consciously do it over and over and over and over again.
Yeah, but we talk about doing the work, and doing the work, as I say to clients, isn't in sessions. It's when you feel yourself turning right, because you've turned right every day. It's like, hang on, I'm aware that I'm turning right, and I'm aware that that's not working for me. So I'm actually going to start turning the wheel to go left instead. And that's going to feel weird. That's going to feel strange. It's going to feel uncomfortable or different. But that doesn't matter. It's important. It's necessary that I go down this way, because that way is not working for me. And so that's essentially what Myndfit is getting people into that awareness and getting them out of their reactive autopilot and into a conscious state.
Yeah, and then it's like you've turned the ship to the left, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, thank God for that, and you let go, and the ship just automatically turns back to the right, and then you're like, oh fuck, I got to do it again, and you do it again, then it turns back to the right.
But by the way, it's effort and repeated effort and repeated effort. You've got to. Takes a while to change that wiring that's so deeply ingrained in everyone.
It does, but it's worth it. It's like when some people have an aversion when they're like, oh, what, I got to, focus and do this stuff every day. Yeah. Like, don't you want a better life?
I had a client, yes.
I can't be bothered. You can't be bothered having a better life? Nah.
And that's cool. Some people...
That's fine.
Yeah, that's this incarnation of them isn't up for doing the work, and there's no judgment. But once again, don't come running to us and complain and don't think it's unfair when you get some illness that you have co-created because of how you've operated all these years. It amazes me that more people aren't just dropping dead in the streets, because so many people struggle to breathe properly. So I do this exercise where I get clients to put a hand on their chest and a hand on their belly, and take a deep breath in. And this is what I see all the time. And I'm like, which hand moves? The top hand. All right. Well, that means you're breathing into the top third of your lungs, the smallest part, and you're just trying to suck air in. I'm like, what we want to do is get that bottom hand moving out, get the tummy expanding and contracting. And so we're playing around with it, and she goes, oh my God, I just can't do it. I want to, and usually it's because of asthma, or it's because of anxiety, or it's because of smoking. There'll be something that's trained them to breathe inefficiently. And she sent me a text yesterday going, oh my God, I was just at the gym and I started focusing on where I was breathing into, and it was mind-blowing to realise that it was just in here, and I was wondering, I was getting puffed so quick, and I was wondering why I couldn't last at the gym very long, and blah, 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 blah. And she said, so I shifted it, and it was a real struggle because she didn't have the neurological pathway to operate the diaphragm, which she said I really had to work consciously to breathe in deeply, and she said it was just a totally different experience.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's just the good thing about that is as well that so the diaphragm is like a muscle that sits on the bottom of the lungs, and like Nick said, most people are breathing shallow in the chest, and so the diaphragm muscle actually kind of contracts. It's like we haven't been breathing deeply into the belly, and so the diaphragm doesn't expand. So we actually have a lower lung capacity, and when you start to consciously breathe into the belly, the actual diaphragm will then expand. It'll get lower. And so then it's actually becomes easier to breathe in the belly, and we have more lung capacity. And that's why, because singers have to be very, very focused on their breath. And singers have I think their lung capacity is 2 to 3 times a normal person, because they've trained it and their diaphragm muscle has expanded. So they're able to use the full capacity of their lungs, whereas most of us are just using half of them, the top half.
But the singers don't have an expectation that muscle just should be working in the way that they want it to. They realise they've got to do the work. They've got to put the effort in.
Isn't there a pill I can take?
Yeah.
Is there a diaphragm expanding pill for my diaphragm contracting disorder that I have?
Yeah, we'll find that, and we'll get a magic wand off the internet and magically make you be able to do that. So I think the whole thing about this episode is that personal responsibility. You know, it's bad things happen to good people and good things happen to bad people and so on and so forth. No one's really a bad person. People are in suffering. Some people, there's so many unhealed. Start looking at people as unhealed people instead of through that binary black and white filter of good and bad. All right, so unhealed people are walking around. They don't realise that they're unhealed. They're going to project their suffering onto other people. There's a lot of work that we can do until we can't rely on them to do the work. Yeah. So there's a lot that we can do to put ourselves in a position where we're stronger in that moment, more resilient in that moment, where we just go, oh, I understand, or you can make the appropriate decision, you know.
And I like that term, unhealed, and everyone's kind of unhealed or healed to different degrees in different areas of life as well. Yes. So you can talk to people and they're fine, then all of a sudden you bring up money and they start getting weird. Or you talk to them about money and they're fine, then you bring up relationships and they get weird. Or, you know, a guy is fine, but also he sees someone not wearing a mask and he can't bloody handle that and he loses his shit. It's like we're all unhealed in these different areas to different degrees.
But just remember that the ego by nature doesn't like things that are different. It hates things that are different. It doesn't like things that aren't like it, that aren't familiar to it. It feels very uncomfortable and gets very reactive and very triggered by it's so important to me to wear a mask, and I think everyone should wear a mask because I wear a mask. There's someone without a mask. Are you kidding me? Fucking crazy bitch. What are you doing with a fucking
Don't
mask?
They watch the news? You're putting us all at danger.
Why isn't everyone in the close vicinity to me operating off my belief system? Why? Why isn't that happening?
You brought up a memory. There was a meme going around, but it was from an actual meeting. But there was this a manager of a company. They were all working from home on Zoom, and he sent out before the Zoom meeting, goes, make sure you're all wearing your mask, because one of the people in the meeting has developed a phobia of people who don't wear masks. So they're all on a Zoom meeting in the room by themselves, all wearing masks.
Wow. So yes,
this is where our rational fears and beliefs can take us to.
But that's, you know, looking at that objectively, that's someone becoming, and speaking from experience, that's someone becoming highly dysfunctional. They're not operating, they're not functioning optimally. They're in a literal sense, they've become dysfunctional.
Yes.
It's sad. It's really sad when you look at this through that lens. So it's incumbent upon that person to go and do the work, to go and learn and find a practitioner, find a guide, find a healer, find someone who can not do the work for them and not stick all the labels on them, but hand and throw the tools and resources down into the well that they've dug for themselves and say, you know, you got this, buddy. Let's go. Start climbing that ladder.
Yeah, it's like made me like it's thinking of you when you couldn't open the front door and being able to look at that and going, oh fuck, he can't open the front door, and having this deep kind of compassion and empathy. Or when I was shaking hand reaching for a crack pipe or something and go, oh look at him, he's got to go do it again and start trying to kill himself and blah blah blah. And then it's also like, oh look at that guy, he can't even handle someone not wearing a mask. It's like trying to be able to have that kind of attitude, and that can take some work, as opposed to meeting adversity by trying to fight back overly or going into that, nervous breakdown state.
Their ego is heavily in the driver's seat. So when you come into contact with another person's ego, we don't want it to trigger your ego, because then it becomes ego versus ego. And we want to stay in our Buddha nature, as we call it at Myndfit, and stay in that compassion and that empathy. Don't get heightened, don't get triggered, don't get into this reactive autopilot. Well, fuck you, buddy. And all of a sudden, everything's burning down. It's just like, all right, well, what can I do in this situation? I can walk away. I can say, yeah, okay, mate. Yeah, okay. Have a good day. I can set a boundary. I can, ask them if they're open to learning something new and trying to educate them. There's so many things we can do, but most people just operate in this sense of I can't. I can't believe they fucking said this. I can't believe they did this. I can't believe that happened. Really? You can't believe that?
You experienced it. It happened.
Yeah.
Yeah, but then it's like we were talking about, then it's that next step, and we don't want to get caught saying, I can't believe I reacted that way. I can't believe I didn't do something else. It's like, use it as information. Okay, it's information that happened that you are now able to respond with that information, that data.
So what's happening there is, when we get so distorted and we look at that stimulus through the distorted lenses, we call it spaghetti brain. We can't see straight and we can't think clearly. We're in that heightened state. When you get home later and you come down from that heightened state, you come out of spaghetti brain, you have a liberated mind and you start seeing things clearly again, you reflect on your behaviour and then you look at yourself through the distorted lens and you go into spaghetti brain again. So it's just in and out of spaghetti brain, waffle brain, spaghetti brain, waffle brain. And if you stay if you stay in spaghetti brain, you're in suffering. And then all of a sudden you're going to have this pity party. You're going to send out all the invites and say, hey, fuck, I was at the shops earlier and then this bloke did this. And I was like, well, fuck you. And he was like, well, fuck you. And you just stay drinking that soup that's slowly poisoning you.
All this food talk's making me hungry, Nick.
Oh, let's catch up for dinner tonight.
Let's wrap it up. I've got to go get a haircut. Nico's coming over to my joint tonight.
You don't have to freshen up for me. I said to you before.
I'm booked in 25 minutes for a haircut.
There's a soft glow filter. If you're listening to this, go and watch it on YouTube.
Maybe I'm pregnant.
Okay.
You said I got a glow.
You do. It's a soft glow. I think you've put a filter on though.
I don't know how to put a filter on Zoom. I don't know what's going on. I just look gorgeous, apparently.
You do. You look amazing. Can't wait
to see you. You get to see me in the flesh today.
Yeah, with all the filters off.
I can't be wearing a filter. Yeah, you'll rock up and you're like, oh. That episode of Seinfeld where his girlfriend she looks great in one light and terrible in another light. You open the door, you're like, where's Hass? Who the fuck's this? Who's this ugly cunt at the door? Come in, Nick.
Oh, very good.
Thank you.
All right,
Thank
people.
you, listeners.
Take responsibility for your own happiness, please.
Yeah.